Okay, so this is just a really brief, cast for my Year 7 students who are currently studying the Tyger, and our time's gotten away with us a little bit, so I would have liked to have spent a bit more time on this, but hopefully this compensates somewhat, and we'll reinforce this in class. So the gist of this is I'm discussing some of the ideas within William Blake's The Tyger. I'm not going to discuss structures and features and things like that. They're things or details about the poet, William Blake. They're things that you can do some research on yourself. Specifically, it's a short cast describing the concerns. And I'm going to discuss 3 concerns, and these 3 concerns should be the basis for your body paragraphs in the commentaries that you'll be writing. So as I go through each of the concerns, make some notes. Make sure you make some notes on not only the devices that have been used in the examples that I give, but also on the meaning behind them. And that's going to form the bulk of what I'm going to be discussing, which is the meaning. Great, so let's get stuck into it. This is the poem itself. Oh, it's not clicking for me. There we go. So this is the poem itself. You can hear recordings of this, so I'm not going to spend time reading the whole thing through. You'll notice, maybe I might make some general comments. In fact, generally speaking, it's structured around these 6 quatrains of 2 couplets, rhyming couplets using terminal rhyme. These are details you should include in your introduction, by the way. And the poem is concerned literally with how this tiger, or how a tiger, or how the tiger is made. First, it's concerned with the way the tiger is made and the beauty of that construction. Secondly, it's concerned with the terrifying potential for violence in the construction of this tiger. And then thirdly, it's concerned with what kind of creator creates this tiger. So more broadly, it's talking about the Creator God and the Creator God's intention towards its creation and for its creation. So what can we deduce about God's character based on his creation? That's kind of what it's getting at here, and specifically narrowing in and describing the creation of the tiger itself, and then making that comparison to the lamb, and we'll get into the symbolism of that later. So what's this poem about? Generally speaking, it's about creation. And then what can we say about the creator? And I think, as it arrives, I think the poem itself is seen as more of a challenge to conventional religious ideas, traditional religious ideas, or traditional ways of perceiving God. And we know that this is true of Blake. What he wants to do is he wants to challenge the way that the church or Christians perceive God. We'll get into the specifics of that soon. And this is specifically why he's written this poem. He's written this as a challenge. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to discuss the idea there. The idea at the top there is the awesome beauty of creation. And I've selected parts of the poem you can see just here. And I've selected probably 1 or 2 parts of the poem per idea that you can talk about. You can talk about more parts of the poem, but I've selected these specific quotes to talk about them. Okay, so it's the second couplet from the first stanza, specifically the first stanza, which is mimicked in the last stanza and the last couplet of the poem, although it's slightly different from the last couplet of the poem. And this idea is the poet describing, or the poetic voice describing, just how awesome creation is. It's just remarkable. And the kinds of thoughts here unpacked by each of these different words is quite remarkable. So first of all, we've got this word immortal. It's an adjective here. And this adjective immortal describes the hand or eye. So we automatically, so we know from the word immortal, the inference there is that we're talking about something supernatural. So immortal literally means that it cannot die. So we know from the outset of the poem, in the first stanza, that the immortal hand or eye is a reference to God. We know also from this word here, frame. To frame, and here it's used as a verb, so not as a noun, it's used as a verb. And it's talking about how things are framed or created. So the word frame there is a synonym for the word created. So we know that we're talking about a being that creates because of this word frame. And we know that we're talking about probably God because of this word immortal. And specifically we're talking here about the God, or the immortal God, who has created the tiger. And here's where it gets really interesting. So we've got a reference here to two aspects of this created God, two nouns, the hand and the eye. And I think actually if you unpack those things, they're actually referring to different ideas. The hand could be seen as the active participant. And this is probably the least interesting or the least phenomenal of the different aspects of creation. There's two different aspects of creation. The hand is the action of creation. So how it is that it's done, what is done, how the world is formed, specifically the actions that are taken to build and construct the world. We know that Darwin wasn't around here, so evolution wasn't an idea. But so this isn't necessarily talking about evolution. This is talking about the construction of a world and how it was done. But the eye, that's more interesting, I think, because the eye actually talks about the vision. So a hand acts, a hand moves and touches and changes things, whereas an eye sees things. And in a metaphorical sense, the eye here is about the vision that God has for creation. So not only does God create the world, but think about this. If God creates ex nihilo, which means from nothing, then there was nothing to give him inspiration for the creation of the universe. So not only does God have to create the universe, he has to imagine the universe. Now it might sound okay if you have prior concepts. Your imagination works on piecing together prior concepts. It's very, very difficult to imagine something which is not familiar to you. So if I ask you the question, can you imagine a new primary colour? It's an almost absurd concept. Can you imagine an alternative to the law of gravity? Phenomenal. You can't, it's impossible to imagine. But God did. So in the creation of the universe, God imagines, he thinks up, he creates the whole idea of gravity. He creates the whole idea of the laws of physics. He creates the whole idea of a tiger, of its environment, of the circle of life, of its ecosystem, of humanity. He creates the idea of sentience. He creates all the physical parts that are pieced together so perfectly and this is the word we get here, symmetry, so symmetrically, so that life can exist. And not only that, not only on Earth, but then the Earth revolving around the Sun and its perfect placement in its orbit around the Sun. And then the Milky Way's perfect placement within the universe. So all of these things are perfectly constructed with such incredible symmetry. And God imagined it. He didn't just do it, but he thought it up in the first place, which is what William Blake is getting at here. And there's a childish awe about this. This is like William Blake's going, Whoa. Whoa. Could you imagine trying to come up with a different colour? Could you imagine trying to come up with a different smell? You are the creator of smells, and you have to create a different one. That's really amazing that God created these things. So there's interesting aspects here. There's kind of subtopics to this idea of the awesome beauty of creation. It's the idea that God, as a creator, creates the world through his hands, through his actions, but also imagines it. Okay. Here we get a description of the creation of the tiger himself. So, and specifically I'm going to focus on the word art here. So art, I think, relates to this word hand in terms of what kind of processes, or art can sometimes refer to magic, what kind of processes or magic or ways did he create the world? And notice that it's phrased as a question. So there's no clear response to this. It's phrased as this ponderous, awe-inspiring question. And he talks about the twisting of the sinews of a heart. Thy here refers to the tiger, your heart, the tiger's heart. So could you imagine, this is imagery is being used here, by the way, imagery of God sitting there with sinews in his hand, and he's twisting together a heart. Pretty phenomenal. Okay, lastly here, what the hammer, what the chain, in what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil, what dread grasp, dare its deadly terrors clasp? And there's this, again, this analogy or symbolism of a blacksmith working at his furnace, pounding away at the creation of a tiger. And it's like, we imagine a blacksmith who creates things, creates specifically things like swords and things that are forged from metal. But here is God creating things forged from nothing, things forged from ideas, things forged from his eye that are enacted by his hand as he pounds away at these things that are created at his anvil. And not only those, but also things that are dreaded, things that are deadly, things that are terrifying. Very loaded language here, very emotive language to describe these things. Which leads us to this point, that not only is creation beautiful and phenomenal in its symmetry, but it is also terrifyingly violent. And this is epitomized in the tiger itself. There's a lovely phrase at the start here, tiger, tiger, burning bright. Now imagine the word burning there could respond to a few different things, could refer to a few different things. Burning could refer to the colour of its fur. So we know the colour of its fur is like, is orange, like a reddy orange. And the stripes could be like flames, or the orange could be like flames through the dark, the night. The burning could also refer to its intent, and its power to destroy. So not only does it look like it's burning, but it has an incredibly destructive power, just like fire has a destructive power in the forests of the night. And this is another reference to its violent potential. We've got the heart began to beat, so its heart is just beginning to beat. And then there's this reference to its dread hand and dread feet. And we know that the hands and feet of a tiger have claws. So this is really interesting because we know that the creator of the tiger gave it claws. And because it gave it claws, the creator intends this being, this beast, to use the claws to inflict violence. So here we have this idea that this tiger is created for the purpose, or at least one of its functions, is to injure, to harm, and to hurt other beings, to inflict violence upon other things. And as humans, perceiving the tiger, they're pretty terrifying beasts. So we have this kind of horrified terminology, or horrified language here to describe the tiger. Okay, so we know that it's obviously here. So, and then we generalise from this point. So not only is the tiger, but if the tiger is a symbol for creation, then we have a look at the destructive power of creation in general. So within creation, we have things like natural disasters, tsunamis, bushfires, these horrible, destructive events that destroy other parts of nature and destroy human life as well. So this creator created this tiger to hurt, but he also created these other natural disasters. And here's where it all comes to a head. This is the second last stanza. These two lines, where it talks after this creation, after discussing the creation, the poet talks about the Creator's response to his creation, how he feels. I say talks about, but he doesn't actually talk about it. He questions, he wonders, he ponders, he ruminates, he imagines, he asks. So did he smile his work to see? Does the Creator look at the tiger and take pleasure in its violent potential? Just like we've done over the past few stanzas, where we have marvelled at the destructive power of the tiger, and we've marvelled at the symmetry of the tiger's creation. Does the Creator do that? Is the Creator happy that the tiger is terrifying? And if that's true, then what does it say about the Creator that he likes creating things that are violent? What does it say about the character of God? This is where it's a challenge to traditional understanding of God. And if that's true, then, well, maybe God isn't this meek, quiet, gentle, reserved, distant being. Maybe this Creator God is fierce and angry and, to some degree, violent. Maybe he's different to the way we perceive him, looking at his creation. And this last reference here, we'll just discuss this really quickly because I've got to go to class. But the lamb here, capital L lamb, is a reference to one of his other poems, which is called The Lamb. You can read that yourself if you like. But more importantly than that, it's a reference to Jesus Christ, his Son. And the lamb is the sacrifice. So lamb is used as a metaphor within the Bible to describe a sacrifice. So the lamb is a sacrifice to appease, to pay for the sins of the people. And here it is the most powerful example of God's love and his mercy. And here is, did he who made the lamb make thee? Did the Creator God, who made this violent tiger, also make the lamb? And there is no greater example of love than the lamb that was sacrificed for the sake of humanity. There is nothing more loving than that. God gave himself up and died. This is the lamb. Gave himself up and died for people who didn't even like him, but for people who hated him. Yet he died for them. He sacrificed himself in a generous and loving way. So how is it that a Creator God, can create something so horrifyingly violent and then also create the lamb, which is overwhelmingly loving? I don't think, actually, William Blake answers that question. I don't think this poem answers that question. I think it looks upon this seeming paradox with a childish awe. And I think that's all I've got time for. Thanks.